yourself in a good book. The Bord Gáis Energy Book Club.
Now, Strumpet City by James Plunkett focuses on the lead-up to the 1913 lockout and describes what life was like for the rich and poor of Dublin alike at that time. We spoke to the book club at Tala Library in Dublin to find out what they thought of our book club choice for April and to hear whether or not they believe it's a relevant read for today. Here's what they thought.
Strumpet City is a slice of life in the working class areas of Dublin and also in the richer areas of Dublin because they intersect from the years 1907. Starts with Edward VII coming on a state visit to Ireland, the King, and finishes up at the start of World War I in 1914. And it describes how people lived in the poorer parts of Dublin and also, by contrast, in the wealthier parts of Dublin around Kingstown, as Dunleary was then called. And it goes up to the big events that throughout the book is brewing and brewing and brewing. Things are becoming more and more intolerable. There's a clash coming, and it comes with the 1913 lockout.
It's a very long book, obviously, and it kept my attention the whole way through, which is quite interesting because there's not really a story as such, but he writes it very well. He writes a little bit of one person's story and then he goes to somebody else's story, so all the time he's going from one story to the other. But he's also very good at making his characters memorable, so you don't get confused between the stories, and in that way he keeps your interest right through the book.
From reading it in 1970, I never forgot Rush's Tierney. He just was an amazing character. Very sad. I mean, he was only 53 when he died, and yet he was quite an old man from being about 40, and he was lame. And how he always had hope, even though he lived from day to day, he always had hope that something would turn up. And he never, there wasn't any social welfare then, but he never thought of begging, or he would try and work. He always wanted to work for his money and played his tin whistle and sold his ribbons and things like that. I think Rush's Tierney is my favourite character.
Dublin is the biggest character in the book, and he calls it Strumpet City. And I remember seeing him being interviewed on television, asked what he meant there. He said a strumpet is an old word. It's like a prostitute, but it's a prostitute with a heart. And he felt that about Dublin, that Dublin was very hard on its own citizens. The people like Rashers Tierney, Fitz and Mary, Sutcher Hennessy, very hard on them. At the same time, there was a love there as well. There was a softer side to it. There was another dimension, but it was tough. He didn't look back with rose-coloured glasses to the Dublin he came from. He grew up out of that, and he ended up getting a good job in the drama department in RTE, have a creative career as a writer and as an administrator in broadcasting. But he had no illusions. He knew where he came from, and he never forgot it, and he captured it brilliantly in this book.
When I first picked up the book and I thought, I'm going to read this now for the book club, I thought, it's going to be depressing. I don't know if I want to read this. It's going to be depressing. And as I read through it, I mean, I was waiting for the big lockout, which is what was on my mind, the real lockout, not when the men went on strike, but when they were locked out in 1913. And I could see that that was going to come in book 3. So I was thinking, oh, I'm not going to enjoy it. And now I can say, I don't know if enjoy is the right word anymore, but I'm glad I read it, and it really touched me. And surprisingly, I was surprised at the amount of times I laughed while I was reading it. And I think each time I laughed, it was when Rashers was in the scene, or, you know, something was happening with Rashers. I thought he was brilliant.
I was very moved by it and informed. Didn't realise the level of poverty around the turn of the century. I was reared in Manchester, and I had seen some clearance in the 50s, but I don't think it was quite as bad as what was in Dublin at that time. And there were still tenement buildings in Gardner Street in the 60s when I came here.
I felt that, and this is not really a criticism, it's just a comment, that there were not that many women in the book, and the women characters were not terribly strong. even Florence and Mary, they were in relation to their menfolk. And again, it's probably partly because of when it was written. But, you know, for example, there were women on strike at the same time, and, okay, I know a lot of the women who were involved in helping were middle-class women, and it was about the tenements. But I felt, you know, that was a shame that there were not more women or stronger women in it.
I think it's a good book for people to read nowadays. What did strike me as I read it is that, you know, these people were poor in a different way to the majority of us today. In that, you know, when in 1913, I remember it striking me when I read 24,000 men were locked out. And I thought, they have to go home, and it's not like nowadays where we have store cupboards and we have, I mean, we could probably all, well, not all, the vast majority of us could probably survive for a couple of weeks on what's at home. But these people only had enough food day to day. So that's different. But what's not different is poverty and is lack of opportunity.
It might appear to be a piece of social history. It is, but it's very cleverly done. It's a page-turner of a book. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And the people within it you'll recognise, they're still around Dublin today.
Congratulations to James Curry from Dublin, who was the winner of this month's book club competition for his review of Strumpet City by James Plunkett. Now, our book club choice for May is for our younger viewers, and it's the great Fragola Brothers, The Twisted. This is by a 9-year-old author by the name of Joe Prendergast. So if you'd like to be in with a chance of winning a packed hamper of excellent, superb children's books, then send us our review, or sorry, send us your review, and they should be no longer than 50 words and should reach us by Friday the 24th of May. They should be emailed to irelandm@tv3.ie or sent by post to Bord Gáis Energy Book Club, TV3, Westgate Business Park, Ballymount, Dublin 24. You can also enter through our website, tv3.ie/book club.
Lose yourself in a good book. The Bord Gáis Energy Book Club.